I pray he continues to love me till my death. I pray he continues testing me and testing me and testing me until I have no questions left. Until I can ingest knowledge and choke on lies and spit out truth with every breath. But you see, until love for what he loves and hate for what he hates is the only thing that's left within my chest. I know that I will constantly fight to love what's right because I was created with a heart that sits slightly to the left. But I'm okay with that. Because I always knew and always know that he knows exactly what is best. You see, he knew that it would only be a matter of time before I would open my eyes and finally realize that I needed to look deep down inside and pull out the divide so that my heart and my mind would collide and learn to work together.
What's going on? What's going on, my good people? We are back for another fire episode. This is Ordinary Conversations with Extraordinary People. I am your host, Mr. Willie Beeman. We are continuing our Women's History Month series. So we're going to tackle it from a different angle today. We want to make sure that we cater to the younger generation of leaders that are up and coming and making things happen in our community. So without further ado, let me introduce this young lady to my left. She is born in Plano, Texas, but raised in Fort Worth, Texas. College graduate from TCU. Shout out to TCU. She has a background in film, television, digital media, and creative writing. Her most recent project, a documentary entitled Underdogs, that has been featured on PBS multiple times. That's huge. That's amazing. Also with Underdogs, was also selected as a finalist for the Golden Short Film Festival in Italy, with Austin Underwood nominated for Golden Actor. That's amazing. Y'all put some fire in the chat, put some hand claps in the chat, online community, for our guest today, Miss Victoria Woodworth. What's going on?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
That's good. That's good. How's your week been going?
It's been going good. I've just been going back and forth, but I also don't have work this week, so I'm very bored. I'm glad I get to do this week.
I got you. Now, studying your bio, I know that we have one thing in common. I'm also born and raised in Fort Worth as well. And so I guess just take a moment to share with our viewers and listeners kind of your upbringing in Fort Worth, Texas.
With growing up in Fort Worth, Texas, I was mainly raised by my grandparents, who inspired me to do everything I want to do nowadays.
Right.
And aside from my mom in the past, they've been my biggest supporters. So everything I do is to typically make them happy and proud. And I don't think I'd be where I am right now without my grandparents.
Wow. How's the relationship with your grandpa? You guys hang out a lot, or?
Yeah, I live with them, so it's every single day.
Every single day.
Unless they go on a trip somewhere, which they're very big hikers.
Wow. So I guess on that topic, what are some things that you do for fun outside of your field of work?
I mean, I hope reading and writing still counts outside of my thing, because I do that at least every day, every week. Yeah, or I just like binge watching shows or movies. That's my idea of fun, or just hanging out with my friends late at night.
I got you. What are some things that you're currently watching? What are your interests?
Right now, I really like Thai media from Thailand.
Interesting.
Yes, I do typically prefer to watch Asian media. I think it's a very, very upscale, grand gesture of entertainment. But as of right now, I like watching shows from Thailand.
Interesting. You might send me some some requests.
I'll send you some recommendations. Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, studying your bio, you mentioned being committed to highlighting underrepresented stories. So for you, what genre do you feel is most underrepresented in mainstream cinema today?
The genre?
Yeah.
That's most I wouldn't necessarily say much of like a genre because I think underrepresented voices can be told in any genre. Whether it's a story that's taken in a comedic standpoint or a dramatic standpoint. You could probably see underrepresented voices mainly in dramas or dark themes, but I think even in happy series, there are some characters who have a smile, but they're hiding something more. And I just want to shed light on that side.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. What made you want to get into, I guess, this film and television space? Was it the grandparents? Was it some friends? Was it some inspiration somewhere?
It was musical theater, actually. I remember one night after coming home from a rehearsal, I told myself, I want to do what the theater director is doing. I want to tell people how to act, where to stand, what to do. I still enjoyed acting, but that night after rehearsal, I went home and I wrote my first script when I was like 10 years old.
Wow. That's
and
amazing.
It was a bad one, but it was the first one. So
you got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. And I still remember it to this day, and I've never rewritten it because there's no saving it.
I got you. You mentioned acting, so I know me studying your bio, a lot of your work is kind of behind the scenes, and so for you, is there a time where you will pursue acting in a sense?
I mean, I definitely consider maybe some extra work if the chance came, because there are opportunities like that in Fort Worth. If they're looking for people of my physical appearance, most of the time it's not the case.
Wow.
But I think I'd still prefer to be behind the scenes. If I could do musical theater again, I could. But I can't really dance as well as I used to because of knee injuries I sustained over the years. So I think behind the scenes right now fits me perfectly because I can still interact with the actors.
Yeah, that makes sense. For you, who are some of your favorite actresses that helped you develop your passion for film and media? Who are some of those people you looked up to?
Steven Spielberg. He's not an actor, but
he's
a really big, influential director. If you don't know who I'm talking about,
it's
I know
definitely who Steven. Definitely who
Jurassic Park, the big time movies. But I think this will probably come as a shock to many people, except my friends who know how much I talk about this movie. I've written like projects about it. It's kind of crazy. It's 2005 War of the Worlds.
I think I do remember that.
I think that's the movie that really just pushed me forward, because I would even act with that movie, like being the people running away from the aliens growing up. But I think everything when I write about film or something, I always say I want to meet Steven Spielberg before he dies as a bucket list, just because him being, I think, in every decade of film says something, and it's evolved over time. He's done multiple genres, whether they were successful or not.
Right.
But if we're talking maybe about more mainstream nowadays, maybe Greta Gerwig or Ari Aster, those are just two other more directors that are on my top 5.
Your top 5?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Outside of those 3, anyone else, or would those be the main 3?
Director-wise, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Walk us through how filmmakers develop the story from concept to script to final product. What does that process look like?
I think it looks different for everybody, but I think it obviously, once again, starts with the script and idea. And then if you get it green light, if people like it, you start with pre-production, you gather locations, your cast, your crew, rehearsing. And then from there, you have your production dates, you start filming, and then post-production with editing, and then distribution or viewings. But I mean, all of that can happen in however short of a time or however long of a time it may be. Most of the projects I did were only a few days of filming, and some of them I did were a couple weekends or a couple weeks. Underdogs probably took a couple months.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it's still probably the most successful one. But we also had an amazing faculty advisor who helped us a lot. So that was another big reason for Underdog's success, besides the students.
Wow, that's huge. Mm-hmm. What would you say would be your approach when it comes to how you write or approach your writing process?
I like creating character profiles. Like, I want to know what my characters are going to be like before I start writing about them and how I think they're going to be, because I don't think your stories are good without well-created characters or backstories or motivations, because when you're writing and you don't realize what your characters are or what they think they would do, then there's not really much of a story to write from there. You get stuck in writer's block. At least that's my experience with it, with how many times I get writer's block.
So when you're in writer's block, what do you do, I guess, to get yourself out of that slump, to make sure you still stay productive and creative?
I'm going to be honest, sometimes the writer's block does win for a very long time. I think I was stuck in writer's block at one point for like 3 years on a story before finally getting it back off. But that's because I had started the story in COVID. And so my ideas were like, okay, let's go. And then I think when college started back up, my ideas were like, I don't know what this character is doing anymore. I need to revisit his motivations and this guy's motivations, and how do I show this person more? And it was a lot of back and forth, but it's finally in a much better spot now. Right. It's finally finished.
Okay. That's good. So this question here, studying your bio as well, what would be the difference between a first assistant director and a casting director? What are the differences between those two?
For casting directors, they are the main point of communication with casting, mainly. So they're helping schedule the appointments of people who wish to audition. They are helping the director with decisions if the director wishes, because sometimes the director will take into account what the casting says, but ultimately, majority of the time, it is up to the director with advice from the casting director. First assistant directors are mainly with the help. They're kind of like a right-wing man is the best way to describe it. Right-wing man or woman to the director. I think everybody's first AD experiences can maybe be different, but more than likely the first AD is the most hated person on the crew for a while, because they're the ones who are in charge of making sure everything is running smoothly on set, so not all of the pressure falls on the director, or keeping up with time. Sometimes you'll get a stank eye from people if if they're like, you have to move on with the next shot.
Right.
So there's a love-hate relationship with the first AD position.
Right. Which one would you prefer most for yourself?
Casting. I've done both multiple times, but I was casting one of the co-casting chairs at TCU for the film club.
Wow. That's huge. Since we're, I guess, on that topic, walk us through your experience attending and graduating at TCU. What was that like for you?
Besides going into it with COVID, I was still able to have a really good life at TCU because there were just so many opportunities, and I didn't even live on the dorms. I would just stay there later and do activities because I only lived about 15, 20 minutes from the dorms and the overall campus area. So I would stay late for a lot of events and just get involved between classes and after classes at nighttime. And aside from doing my film classes and film work, I also helped with Harry Potter Club for a small amount of time. It was a very small amount of time. And then I was also president for a group called Asian Media Association, where they're doing great things right now. They're actually about to host a Squid Game event again in inspiration of season 2. Pretty much anyone on campus is welcome to join that huge game they got going on. Cool. And then I just did as much as I could, and then I also worked in the chancellor's office on and off, along with other small campus jobs up until graduation.
Gotcha.
So I never stopped being active, and if I could have stayed at the school longer, I would have.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave, and I think my grandma could even as well testify to that. I wish I was still in school right now.
Right. I understand. So we got some questions, comments from our viewers. For you, where did the idea of Underdogs come from?
The idea of Underdogs kind of starts with our faculty advisor once again, because she mostly decides the topic from what the class is going to do the documentary on, because she has connections with a lot of nonprofit charities around the Fort Worth area, DFW, and she had known Jan and Austin's family for a long time. They were actually supposed to be a main story first, but COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that kind of stepped back Austin Underdogs for a while, but we finally got the chance to do it after a really long time. And so she just decided we're going to do it now, and we're going to make sure it's great, it's fun, because at the end of the day, some documentaries are pretty dark, even some of the ones that have been done through TCU, but Underdogs is definitely more of a brighter story, I think.
Wow.
Not that it, no shame at all to other films that were made at TCU whatsoever, because each one of them holds an incredibly important message. And so I just think it's a great opportunity for anyone at TCU to do.
That's dope. How can our online community check out Underdogs? Is it somewhere on a platform where we can take a look at it?
It's currently not on any platforms right now, only because it's still on the film festival circuit.
Okay.
And I mean, if you had the chance to catch it on PBS, then that was great. But I don't know where the next stage for Underdogs is going to be, but I think hopefully in the future it can be distributed somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be somewhere one day, just not right now.
Yeah. I know, It seems like it takes time. There's a lot of work behind it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it took about 2 to 3 months for Underdogs to be...
Give or take,
Give or take. What was the timeline from beginning to end for Underdogs?
Well, since this was a whole crew full of students with a faculty advisor, it was definitely different, as everyone has their own sort of ideas.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing we wanted to share off with Austin's story is that he's just someone who's so incredible, first off foremost. We wanted to share just how amazing he can be and how he is, and how he beats so many stereotypes that a lot of people see people with Down syndrome. Even us as a class, we don't say disability anymore. We choose the word differences. We say special differences.
Wow, I like
because at the end of the day, that's what it is. And not everybody is going to think that same way, unfortunately. But I think with Underdogs, it's just opened up a lot of people's eyes even. The day of our premiere, we had a lady in the audience. I was part of a panel after the premiere of the film. We were taking questions, and a lady in the front row, she had 2 kids. One of them in her lap was definitely on that different spectrum.
Right.
And she just started bawling out, crying to us, saying, "We just saw your premiere was going to be on later today on the news. I don't think we would have seen you guys if we didn't see it on the news today. And you gave me hope."
Wow.
And she had a very long conversation with Jan after that panel was over. So I think that's what overall also inspired us to keep doing what we do. I had to hold tears back when talking to that woman, but that's what inspires most of us to keep doing what we're doing.
Wow. How did you feel being at the premiere, knowing that you're watching your own work being shown to the people in the room? What were your emotions like?
A lot of emotions. There's not a singular emotion to describe that feeling, because I think it's a lot of nervousness and excitement, because you don't know how people are going to react to it until you hear like the gasp and the "oh" or the anything like that. And most of the time it's just an array. The last film I premiered, I was incredibly nervous, but people took to it very well. So that made me happy.
Now, it's great that you mentioned that, because I believe anything that we do, if there's still a sense of nervousness, that just shows that we care for it. And we love what we do. So
I mean, at the end of the day, not everybody is going to like every movie that's ever shown to them. But it is what it is. You have to try not to let that get to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. In film, how do you go about getting film into the film festival? What is that process?
Into a film festival? At least with my experience, is that there is a website called Film Freeway, and you put your project into the website and choose which festivals or which projects you want into certain festivals.
Right.
And I've only done it a couple times, so I'm not the biggest expert to ask on how to get your film into a film festival, but I've also judged quite a few films at this point. And it is a very, very competitive world. I've done Lone Star for 2 years now. This was my second year doing it, and I judged over 200 films that were entered into the festival, maybe 200 to almost 300 out of more than 500, 700 films that were... it was a lot. And then I just did a one in Irving ISD for high schoolers who wanted to get their foot into the industry a little bit. They're at a starting point, so we can't judge them as like other festivals, obviously, but it's different, and every single film festival looks at a film a little differently and what works for their block and what they're representing, essentially.
Right. When you're judging these films, what's the criteria? What are you looking for when it comes to judging these particular films?
At least like if it's a Texas film festival, if we're talking about Lone Star specifically, a few things that really stand out to the judges, at least who are in charge of this, is that, first of all, if it's a Texas-based film, if it's made in Texas or showcases any Fort Worth or just Texas locations, that's one good stamp in your book. They also really love female filmmakers and writers. If there was a crew predominantly with female identifying people, then that's another win in their book. And they're also highly inclusive, so they really also look at people who are part of the LGBTQ community as well. Yeah. So that also ranges like a whole other thing. And then they also still have a whole separate section for high schoolers or children. We've had the one youngest I saw this year, she was 13 years old, and she had a really solid story, but there just wasn't enough space to include her story, unfortunately. But she was, for her being only 13, she was amazing. Yeah. So, whereas with the Irving ISD, because these were still students who were learning how to like make film and keep the continuity straight, not all of them were solid, unfortunately, but that's because they're all still learning. So I had to judge it like, what do these high schoolers have and what do they have to keep going? Yeah. Because not all of the high schoolers had the same resources as everybody else, and not all of them had the same time as others, because I can tell when some of them could only film when they were at school, or some could only film after school or before school or at home only if they were doing it all by themselves. Like, there's a lot of things just to consider overall. Yeah. But I saw that range of students at the Irving ISD Festival, and their ceremony is next week for awards.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Going back to your walk at TCU, or you thinking about getting your master's degree at TCU? I know you mentioned you wanted to go back to school, so.
I do. If I was able to financially get a master's degree, I probably would. Unfortunately, TCU does not have a master's for my department specifically. If I wanted to go back and maybe do English or writing, that's a possibility. But if I wanted to move forward with an education, I would probably look at other schools to do so. But I'd still want to try to support TCU in some way. And when I say that, I just mean like I'd probably have to go out of state to get a film master's. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I got you. How does TCU support students pursuing internships, research, and career opportunities? What does that look like?
Every single semester, there's always usually a job fair or a specific job fair for certain majors to help out. There's been a couple at the school I was a part of on campus. There's been ones for nursing, and then there's been ones that cater to almost every major at TCU. And they also have a career center at TCU in the Chancellor's building. It's called the Harrison building. Right. But they have a career center that can help you be on the right track to getting a job out of graduating from TCU. And I met with a woman in there quite a few times.
Wow. Wow. That's huge. Mm-hmm. For you, I know we mentioned Underdogs a few times, but for you, what was the purpose in writing this documentary?
Purpose as in?
Just in general, for you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, first off and foremost, kind of like what I said earlier, we wanted this to be a happy take on the story, and we didn't want this to be a super depressing story, because that's not what Austin's story is, and we're thankful for that. And I have maybe like 20 plus drafts of Underdogs on my computer. If I just like look up Underdogs, I'll be like, oh, you have this many drafts with Underdogs in the name. So we just kind of formulated how we wanted to tell the story from like early childhood when he was born, when he was in high school, middle school, up until he was going to college, and then from college getting his own food truck to where he is now. If you wanted to visit Austin, you could just go to Camp Peasy's on Camp Bowie Boulevard. That's where he works. He's never missed a day of work unless he's promoting his food truck somewhere.
Right.
The food there is really good too.
What type of food does he have?
It's Italian. Camp Peasy's has Italian food, and he will almost always be your waiter.
That's huge. How is Austin, I guess, on set and working with him? What's their relationship like?
Oh, Austin got very close to quite a few people who were always talking with him, as well as his fiancée, Jenny. Once you get to know those two, they are like the biggest bursts of energy you will ever talk to or meet to. Like, they're even wanting us to go out and film their wedding coming up. Yeah, that's gonna be hopefully an experience we all get to do.
Yeah.
I would do anything to see Austin again because I can't see him as often as I used to when filming the documentary anymore.
Right.
But I mean, we do see him at film festivals if they're in the area as well. Mm-hmm.
Right. For you, are there, outside of Underdogs, are there any upcoming projects that you're working on that we can possibly be waiting for this year?
As of right now, I am working on a story. The story is finished. I just recently put out a GoFundMe to help fund the equipment and distribution sales for the project. It's a pretty important project to me where I'm having a friend who I met judging film festivals. She's going to be coming in and helping me as my main DP, aka director of photography on the project. And I'm hoping to get this story out because, once again, it's a way for me to show underrepresented voices, especially in the entertainment industry. It's like a movie in a movie, essentially. Yeah. So I hope I can do that project this year. If not, I will just keep doing it until I can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gotcha. Going back to writing, what role does research play in your writing process for a documentary? Because I know it has a lot of moving pieces. So what role does that play?
A lot of our research, first and foremost, came from Austin and his mom, Jan, themselves. They came in for a class period to talk to us about their story, and I just remember writing every single detail that they told me.
Wow.
Like, I would not stop writing the whole time, and they were like, yeah, she's taking her job as being a writer very, very diligently. And even like before then, I had done so much research on some articles that were truthful, at least, like they were from a secure website, so I knew that they were good pieces of information. Yeah. So I was able to get more answers to questions I had after looking at the articles too. Wow. And Jan has told that story so many times that she has it just memorized to a T at this point.
Gotcha. So for our online community, how could we find information for the GoFundMe? Because we want to make sure that people are supporting what you're doing.
I don't have the exact name of the link off the top of my head, unfortunately, but I believe the title on GoFundMe is Help Support Victoria's Impactful Film. Okay. It should have a photo of me as the cover photo with a camera.
Okay, gotcha. How important is it getting to know the characters when you're putting them in the documentaries? Or you mentioned getting every detail from Austin to make sure that everything goes well. How important is getting to know the characters?
It was pretty important for this story because each of them had a good view and perspective on things as to how we wanted to tell the story. And a big thing with this one is that all the people we were able to gather, Jan knew like they were friends, or a really big one we were able to get was a director from the North Texas Down Syndrome Society. I feel bad for not remembering the exact name, but we got someone to speak on behalf of a pretty big organization in North Texas. Yeah. So that was a big win. And we even tried to get the director of a movie to speak via Skype or phone call, but that didn't work out, unfortunately. Wow. But it was a director who had written a movie where the character had different learning differences. And so we thought that would be even great, but that didn't happen. That was just a goal we were reaching for. But we had teachers from the Kinderfrogs area that's right by TCU, where all of the children come in and they're still learning how to walk and talk and to eat. And then they come out just thriving. So we had multiple different perspectives because Jan just had such a big community under her and willing to support her, her and her son, Austin.
Gotcha. Being in this writing process, is anyone else that you're probably mentoring or teaching that want to be in this field?
As of right now, I don't have anybody under my wing, but I think the closest I've come to that is working with the Lone Star Film Festival once again during their summer camps and helping those kids for the last 2 years. It's a different group every time, but I just feel like such a big mentor to them when they're coming in. And when I tell them my experiences, they just have a ray of hope go through their eyes. And they're the reasons why I keep going ultimately, because I want to be someone that they can look up to and say, I knew this person and everything like that.
Yeah, that's huge. I know we mentioned earlier, how does it feel knowing that Underdogs has been featured on the well-known TV network PBS? What was that feeling like?
Crazy. Not real. Just a lot of connections come back down to that opportunity, but the fact that a network like PBS was able to show it for a certain period of time, they showed it all for the month of Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and then they showed it a separate time a few months prior to that. So both times it was crazy, and I think I still have it saved in my recordings catalog because I can just go back and be like, oh, my name was on TV. That was my face was on TV for a certain amount of time. My voice was on there. That was weird, but it was cool. Yeah, because it was something I'd always wanted.
Wow, that's huge. Now, this is a question that I feel like I need to know. If you could rewrite 4 well-known movies, what would it be and why?
Oh, gosh. 4 well-known
movies, TV series, whichever one you prefer. What would it be and why?
I don't know. That's a tricky question because I don't try to watch bad movies unless I just want to watch them for fun or something. Maybe the Sharknado movie franchise. Oh. Just because maybe I know that they were filmed to be bad movies overall, but I wonder what would happen if you made them good movies, where the sharks didn't look totally CGI because that franchise had such big stars on it at one point, and it just makes you think what could have been done if the sharks looked more realistic. I know that was the point, but that's just something to consider. And there was a really bad horror movie I watched recently. I'm sorry if I'm only mentioning horror movies, but I love them. Me too. There's one called The Sand. And
I haven't seen that one.
Good. It was a movie where some drunk college students got stuck on the beach, and they were trying to leave, but the sand was eating them. And and the sand, when it would eat them, it would just have little CGI lines coming out of the sand and just wiggling, and then they would just. I had to laugh too much. One guy got stuck in a trash can and he was eaten from the bottom of the trash can. Oh, yeah, it was really weird. So I'm maybe if this wasn't this way either, maybe something could have been done.
Yeah, that's...
Because the characters just had no dimension at the end of the day. And maybe... I think I'm only going to be able to name 3, so this is the third one. It's cool. It's not a well-known movie, but I think it's just well-known because of how much attention it got. In case you didn't know, the Steamboat Mickey got released into public domain recently. The very first visual representation of Mickey Mouse was brought into public domain, and as soon as that was announced, a horror movie of that was announced as well. And it was quite possibly one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I always commit someone for making a movie because it's not easy to make a movie at the end of the day, but it made 0 sense. Because they were writing on maybe an $800,000 budget, whereas other horror movies that had way less of a budget had maybe $300,000 or $250,000. They were a lot better than this budget of $800,000. At least made wise. And I think that's where yes.
So I know you mentioned something earlier. I thought it was interesting. People actually putting out bad movies. So how do you differentiate bad movie from a good movie?
At the end of the day, I never want to say something is a bad movie unless it was made with really poor intentions and made to like harm or a community or destroy something.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, somebody made a movie, somebody had an idea to make it. I think it's just a matter of what they choose to do with the budget and what they choose to create with it, because some people will only focus on one certain aspect of their budget and put it towards that rather than, because I think good movies are ultimately, once again, made with good characters.
Yeah.
And a lot of bad movies don't have well thought out of plots or motivations within the characters.
Makes sense.
And that's where a movie usually falls flat for me. And I'm not going to be the only one who thinks this, but I think probably one of the worst movies I've had seen, because I feel like it was made with zero research to it, was an Oscar-nominated and winning film. It was Emilia Perez. I don't think that was a great representation of what it put out to be.
Right.
And a lot of the cast has not been very, there just wasn't a lot to their thoughts on how it performed. It's a very problematic film at the end of the day because it does harm a community, at least two separate communities or more within it. So that's where I would rather watch the Mickey horror film and the really bad CGI sharks over that film, because that was a high production, well made out film, but it didn't have any good characters or meaning behind it.
Wow.
Selena Gomez was in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
The supporting actress said, "I'm sorry that you're offended by the movie," after the Oscars.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't have good press, I can tell you that.
For you, what would be harder to develop, a movie or TV series? What do you think is more difficult?
I think it depends on like the TV series or the movie you're making, because some movies stay in production longer than others and some TV series stay. Because if you're putting me like making a 1-season TV series that was maybe 12 to 24 episodes as opposed to like maybe a 2-hour movie, I would probably take the 2-hour movie over the TV series. Because the TV series, you have to keep developing and working with people, so it comes out at I feel like there's just both ultimately have a lot of stuff to work on.
Yeah.
But I think I would rather work on a movie for a longer period of time than a TV series. I do enjoy wanting to work in TV series, though I want to break out there, but I haven't had the chance to yet, so I can't say much I can't speak much about working on a TV series set.
Yeah. Would you consider doing your own TV series in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's the first film I made at the TCU SFA, aka the Student Filmmakers Association.
Yeah.
It was a comedy script called The Parker House. And it was about 4 guys who lived in the same house with the same name, and they were trying to pay off their rent in 24 hours.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was very much written in the style of an American sitcom. So, but aside from like that script, I had such bigger backstories laid out for them that I want to show people. And I think these characters just have so much more to show. And I can say, I have a concept film if you guys want to take Parker House into consideration, because I just think it was my first like film I ever directed. So it holds a really big place in my heart, as well as the actors who were in it. And they ultimately got a lot of good opportunities from it, as well as any of the TCU theater majors who've starred in the films that we do. One of them got accepted into a university in New York because of her work she did.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge.
And she only did 1 film with us.
1 film? Wow. I know you mentioned nonprofits earlier. Are there any other nonprofits that you're looking to work with or want to partner with?
If I'm being honest, I probably haven't done as much research on nonprofits as I should have. So if I really wanted to, I would ask my former professor, Charity Robinson, about them. But there is also a place not far from where I live, at least, that my teacher had done a project or an advertisement for, and I believe it was called the Underground, which helps children who have been unfortunately abused and taken advantage of, and they give them home and shelter and food to reconvene and start a new life separate from what they once knew. So that's a place that's really important to me, and if I could work for them, I would definitely choose to.
Yeah, yeah. Going back, Parker House, man, that sounds like it can be a cool. What was the thought process in putting that together? Was there some childhood TV series?
I think I was just like, I always write really dark and depressing stuff. I should try to write a comedy, maybe. And it's like my high school teacher, who was my like media teacher at the time, he told me in a note from graduation, he's like, remember, Victoria, not everything has to be dark. I will never forget that. So I was like, okay, I've been writing scripts for this film club for a couple years, haven't gotten selected. Let me see what happens if I write a comedy, and it got chosen. Wow. So that at least told me that I could write comedies, and people laughed at it. The premiere for that one was just hilarious because people couldn't stop laughing. And it also had given an opportunity to an actor we had known very well, and he's doing amazing for himself, but it was the first time he got to star in a comedy for that film club. He was always in really dark, dramatic stuff, and in this one, he just got to be like, I mean, he was still kind of a hostile character in a way, but he was able to act and be more natural around these people that he had already known. And cool thing about him is that he actually just guest starred in a small speaking part on Law & Order SVU.
Wow.
In New York.
Wow, that's cool. Are there any other actors or actresses that you want to work with in the future?
Ooh.
I know you mentioned Steven Spielberg already.
If we're talking about actors, though, I would love to work with Kit Connor. He's definitely probably more so someone who's known amongst the younger generations, right. But he has a lot of diversity, and he also does stage plays. I think he just ended a round of Romeo plus Juliet. That's at least what I think the show was specific. Romeo plus Juliet, not Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. And then he was also in The Wild Robot. He voice acted in an American accent. He is British.
Wow.
And then he was in Heartstopper, and he's working on doing so many other projects as well.
Wow. For you, is there any experience, I guess, working in the theater space for you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Is there any experience working like in theater, or it would be high school or things of the sort?
If I'm being honest, I have never really worked much of a theater show before.
No?
I've only acted in them and maybe I've provided sounds to live shows and directed like live shows, but I've never been behind the scenes for a musical theater performance before. I would love to if I got the chance, but sometimes when you're applying to work in theater, they're definitely looking for people, not one who've had like experience acting, but also like experience building sets. Or I think my experience running live shows could definitely help if I wanted to help run a musical theater show, but right. I haven't had much luck, if I'm being honest, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But acting definitely helps me get a better perspective for the behind the scenes stands.
No,
so
that makes sense.
That's where I know I can prove myself if I ever chose to work and go down that field.
Gotcha. Does a lot of your creativity come from personal experience or from things that you watch and see?
Personal and things I've seen for the most part. Mainly just like, once again, personal, just based off of stories people have told me that have happened in their life, which unfortunately a lot of people don't have a happy backstory. And I think I don't think, unless they just choose not to tell their story, I think it's a good thing to tell their story.
Yeah, I totally
because
agree.
It shows people that they're not alone in the space they're growing up in, that that's a lot of people's experiences can be a universal experience.
Yeah. Gotcha. We got some more from the chat.
Ooh.
I know you talked about being in the job market. Can you explain what that process is like for a film industry perspective, from that perspective?
I'm not going to lie, the film perspective, or the perspective of getting into the film industry, it is very hard. It is a very competitive space, which is why it is so important to have connections and start making them when you're younger.
I totally agree.
As of right now, my biggest connection has been the Lone Star Film Festival and talking to people who've made a bigger impact, like Taylor Hardy and Chad Matthews, who is in the executive director of the Lone Star Film Festival. Having those connections has been the biggest part, and then even staying in contact if you went to college for film, stay in contact with your professors, because that's how one of my friends was able to book something out of college.
That's important.
I'm trying to get down that same road right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge.
Never stop talking.
No, I agree. You never stop talking, never stop learning, because you just never know who you may need in the future. For you, what would be the key differences in storytelling between film and television?
With storytelling for a movie or a TV show?
Or a series, what would be some differences?
I would say the main differences for the TV series is try to keep your thoughts for one episode in that one episode, because you gotta draw it out depending on how many episodes you got it lined up for, or tell it in however many minutes you have for that singular episode. Whereas a movie, you just don't stop writing and do what the characters want to do during that time. At least that's how I see it. Like, you have the space to maybe write the things you want for your characters more.
Yeah.
Whereas with the TV episodes, you're like, oh, no, I can't tell this part of the story yet. I have to wait till I get to like episode 5 or 6 or something.
Right.
That's at least how I see it in my way of writing it for differences.
Gotcha. Being in this space, are there any books that you're reading in order to help, your creativity, the way you continue to learn?
I read so many books that I don't. I have so many different books. There's a whole shelf at my house. I don't know. I read and write so much that it's just all one. If I want inspiration, I'll just pick up a specific book from my shelf about it. Whether it's a graphic novel, a horror one, or a drama one, comedy, whichever. Yeah. Sci-fi. Sci-fi is a really big one. I love reading sci-fi.
I love sci-fi. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about, in regards to sci-fi, what do you think about Stranger Things? Is that something that you watch? What's your take on? My biggest.
I didn't make it past episode 2 of Stranger Things.
The first season? Yes. Oh my! Why? Elaborate.
Okay. There are just some mainstream forms of TV I never got into, but then also TCU brought the actor who played Billy on, and I went to that, and without even knowing much about who Billy was. Wow. I just went because I was like, oh, this would be cool. And a lot of people compared me to, I think, one of the girls who got killed off in episode 1 or 2. I think her name was Beth.
Yeah.
A lot of people told me I looked like her, and then I was like, oh, she dies. So thank you for telling me how much I look like her. Only for me to like slightly get attached to her, and then I'm like, oh, she's stuck in a dark place. And she's gone. Okay, that's great. But I watched the whole thing, and I was just told the whole story. I just watched a spoiler thing so I could talk about it with people and say, yes, I did watch that part of the series.
Oh my god. I'm so heartbroken. I love Stranger Things.
I'm sorry. I appreciate what all the actors have done in that time on that series, because it was not an easy series, and they grew up on that series.
Yeah.
The kid actors. And they're all now like teenagers, almost adults now at this point.
True.
So definitely a lot of props to anyone who was working on that series.
Okay, another one. What's your thoughts on Cobra Kai? Do you watch Cobra Kai?
I did watch some of Cobra Kai. Never finished Cobra Kai.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm heartbroken. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
For you, in your own words, give us your definition of what it means to be an associate producer. I know you wore a lot of hats. I was studying your bio, so what are the tasks?
Associate producers, I would say, mainly help producers in any sort of circumstance. At least, like, if you're in a college film club, it's going to look drastically different from working on an actual set once you're out of college. But associate producers, at least like in the college film world, if you're trying to get your foot in the door, you're kind of shadowing the producers who've known what they're doing since they've been in college, and you're learning how to do stuff from them, and they'll assign you smaller tasks. And if the producers are busy, they'll come to you. I know it's definitely extremely different from the small no, not the small, from the big TV and film world, because you'll probably be doing a heck of a lot more stuff. Or in some cases, some of the actors, like if they're big enough starring actors, they could just earn an associate producer role or an executive producer role just by being who they are and their involvement in the project.
Right.
So it really does differ.
Gotcha. Take a moment to share with us the backstory on how you became the finalist for the Golden Short Film Festival with Underdogs. How did that connection come about?
I don't know, because I don't remember every single festival that our professor entered us into. All I know is that like the day she'd sent us that we were finalists in that, I literally screamed, and then I called my grandparents and I was like, look at this. We were doing this and Austin got nominated for this. This is crazy. This is an international festival. What are you talking about? We're in an and that was like, that's also the first nomination for Austin as well, for like an individual award rather than best student film or best documentary or best student documentary. So that's an insane honor in my opinion. Like, lost my mind on that.
Wow.
It really did.
Wow. For your grandparents, are they proud of some of the things that you've accomplished so far in your career, or people that are in your circle?
Yeah, they definitely are. I think on the last film I did, really, I think no matter what kind of film I'm doing, or they are always happy with every film project I do finish.
Yeah. Because
it's a film project, and they know it's what I love and what I want to continue doing. So they're always going to be there for me, and I know that.
That's huge.
So, and I wouldn't have even probably been able to go to college without them either.
Wow.
So that they're a big support. My biggest support, besides from my best friends.
Gotcha. Any siblings? Any brothers? Any sisters?
I'm an only child.
Wow. How was that growing up?
When I was younger, I really wanted siblings. As I grew older, I'm glad I didn't. But it's interesting. Some of my work mainly features brothers or siblings. So a lot of people have asked me, like, why do you write about siblings when you've never had any? And I think that stems from my childhood longing of wanting a sibling or imagining how they could act or something like that. But it's interesting.
Wow. That's huge. I guess for you, I'll turn the table. Okay. What would you share for someone who wants to get in film and media and television? What would be some things you want to share with them, people who want to get into this industry?
The biggest thing I'm going to go off of, and I will tell the younger filmmakers I meet today, like, you can start as soon as you want to if you have a phone that has an iPhone camera or any sort of just camera that records, because you can make an entire movie on your phone. It's possible. Some of them, whether they're good or bad, it's possible, and it can teach you a lot when it comes to starting and getting into editing softwares and seeing what you can do with free time you have. Yeah. It can teach you so much. Don't be afraid to look at YouTube videos on how to do something. Get involved with film camps you see in the area. Go to film festivals. That's even more important than anything. And just talk to people. Just don't stop creating, and don't let anyone tell you to stop creating. Wow. Even Steven Spielberg once said, use that phone you're using to record me to make a movie.
That's huge. Anything else you would like to share with our online community? Any thoughts?
As of right now, no, but I will always love talking about films and film work, and I will probably never stop talking about it because it's what I love to do.
Yeah, that's huge. Any more from the online community? That's it?
Dang.
How can, I guess, people follow you on social media? Stay connected to you.
You can follow my film page mainly, because that's where my film content will mainly go to now, at pump.kin.productions. Pump.kin.productions.
Okay.
Yep. Or if you just want to follow my main, because I post a lot of stuff on my main, it's KOKORO Heart 13. Kokoro Heart 13.
Repeat that one more time for us.
KOKORO Heart 13.
Gotcha. Well, today was great, man. Today was great. I had an amazing time learning about you and the work that you do. I just hope that you continue to do what you do and learn and grow, because I think we're forever learning no matter, how old we get. So I'm definitely excited, for what you're doing in regards to the younger generation being in film and media and television. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Say, keep going.
I will.
Well, that is the show for today. This is Ordinary Conversations with Extraordinary People. I am your host, Willie Beeman. We will continue our series in Women's History Month, making sure that we cater to our women, because they are doing some extraordinary things here in our community. So y'all stay tuned. Watch us next Wednesday at 12 p.m. See you soon. Peace.